Welcome back to AOL, the Anatomy of Life podcast, a podcast that has a unique perspective on health, resilience, and living with intention and on a mission to whole person health. Now, unlike other health and wellness podcasts, this one brings a fresh approach that challenges mainstream ideas and dives into the many dimensions of wellness. And before I introduce the guest for this episode, AOL's focus for season 2 is on relationships, both in the way that we as a society talk about relationships and then also beyond the traditional sense of the word. This is where we include interactions with healthcare, lifestyle, self-care practices, and not only our relationship to ourselves, our partners, friends, stress, food, music, education, creativity, and our finances, but also our relationship with work, colleagues, bosses, our careers, and ultimately our path in life. Let's put a magnifying glass over our relationship with our careers, leaders, colleagues, and our purpose. Our next guest is a multi-award winning career and burnout coach that focuses on career and leadership development coaching, communication, diversity, and inclusion. Not only has our guest bagged her latest award in 2023 for coaches who push boundaries, she is also the founder of the Glow Zone and helps ambitious people increase their confidence and articulate their value. She has been featured in Stylist and the All-Bright columnist, a powerful woman, mother and wife, and I'm so grateful and excited to have Aimee Young on the AOL podcast. Welcome, Aimee.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction.
You are doing some great work. And as a health coach, when I coach clients, we talk about career a lot. That is 90% of your life. And so we're going to dive in to a couple of questions. Before we begin, Aimee, I'd like you to just give us a brief insight into who Aimee is, where you're from, where are you currently based, and how did you get into what you're doing currently?
Of course. Okay. So I, like you, was born in South Africa. And I left South Africa when I was about 14, moved to the UK, which explains the strange hybrid accent. And in particular, I will say to people listening, that because I'm talking to a fellow South African, my accent definitely comes out a lot stronger when I'm talking to you, which makes me so happy. But yeah, my background, actually, I was a primary school teacher for a long time, for about 6 years. I really thought, this is it. I found my calling. I found the thing that lights me up and just makes me so happy. And it got to sort of 5 years into the career. And I just thought, you know what, something's not right anymore. Something's not feeling right. And I think when you are so sure about your career and what you're going to do, and then you have that moment of doubt, it can be quite an unnerving thing to go through. And I really remember struggling with that kind of concept of, what am I going to do? What do I want? Will I ever be happy? All that, existential crisis stuff. I left teaching and I went traveling for a bit. I worked in a pub for 3 months. I really just took time out, and I was very fortunate that I could do that because I had a family who could sort of support me through that. And I ended up starting again in HR and learning and development. So still keeping that real core value, and we'll talk a lot about values on this podcast, but that core value I have of education and curiosity, but switching it and reframing it to corporate learning. And it was the switch that stuck. I'm 10 years in now to this career of coaching and learning and development, and I'm so happy and I love it so much.
And, I'm not sure if many people reflect on questions like, what does my career mean to me? Or am I excited about what I do? And does my career align with purpose and my goals? So my hope is that this conversation sparks some interesting people to look at their careers and purpose and ask these questions. And if people are currently struggling with a way through their choosing a career path or navigating difficult moments in their current path, then this conversation could help them find their way and switch on some light bulbs for people. I was in a similar situation. I was in corporate for many years. I did marketing, and then I was a personal trainer and I would train people. And I just felt a disconnect between the marketing I was doing or my 9 to 5 and then what I was doing after work, and nothing was really connecting. I then moved fully into personal training, and that seemed to spark joy. And then I went through a very serious health scare, and that sparked something different. So, as you move through your life, your career can change, and that's not a bad thing. It's actually, for me, it was a vital thing to change. And through the health scare, now being a health coach and now being the host of a podcast, this is where your life takes you, and you become multifaceted. And it just shows you such beautiful parts of yourself that before I would be fully afraid of. So I'm hoping that people take something away from this that will spark some joy. I've actually separated our conversation into 7 categories. This is just to help our listeners separate the various categories, because maybe, work-life balance is not something you want to hear about, but maybe burnout is something you want to hear about, or mental health, or how to deal with your colleague. But for any listener out there, there's 7 different categories that could possibly apply to you. And let's begin with the first, which is career, colleagues, and workplace dynamic, which I think can be quite controversial. So how can someone figure out if their job really matches their values and goals?
This is a great question, and something I always do with clients. My first session is we will focus on values. I'm a firm believer that if you do not understand what your personal values are, you will stay stuck. And it is not as difficult as it can feel if you've never done value work before. So when you're thinking about whether, that role that you're in, the career trajectory that you're following really is for you, the first step is thinking about what matters for you. So when I talk about, what lights me up, the joy, the glow zone, all of that stuff, what I'm really talking about is, how do my values show up in the work that I do? And I'm not saying that every single job has to be sunshine and rainbows every day. Okay. Yes. We're not Delulu completely. Yes. We do know that there's parts of our jobs, parts of the things we do that are like, oh gosh, do I have to do that? But as long as, for the most part, you're able to find meaning, purpose, creative freedom, whatever those values are to you in your work and what you do, then there is hope for you to find a way through that career trajectory, a way through that career path that is meaningful, that will light you up, that will provide you with intellectual stimulation, healthy challenge, joy, happiness, excitedness, creativity, all the things that we really need to thrive at work. Super important to make sure you first do some values work, really connect with those values. And it's very easy to do. You can literally go on ChatGPT or Google a whole list of values, go through, 50 values, 100 values, pick out 10, 20 that mean something to you, then write them all out, distill them back down into sort of 7, 8. There's no right limit or wrong in how many values you have. But the most important thing is that you really connect with that feeling. And also on the subject of feeling, I do think, and you'll resonate with this as a health coach, you cannot underestimate the power what your body tells you about what you're doing. Think about, how do you want to feel about what you do? How do you want to feel on a Sunday night? How do you want to feel on a Monday morning? And if it's doom and gloom and it's sadness, we know something's not quite right, so you're not aligned.
With that, how do workplace relationships with colleagues influence your overall job satisfaction and well-being? Because we were talking about, how do you feel on a Sunday night? How do you feel on a Monday morning? Is it dread and doom and gloom? Is that part and parcel about your workplace relationships with colleagues?
Hugely. And I think even more so post-COVID. Before COVID, for the majority, most people were going into an office 5 days a week, right? And they built very strong bonds. I remember, going for drinks with friends after work or whatever. And it was just a very my work people were my friends. And I think when COVID came along and we were a bit more remote and hybrid, and we've got people, there's so many benefits to this beautiful new way of working in this hybrid way, but we weren't as connected. I think that can be really hard. It can feel very isolating and feel very lonely, and you have to put a lot of extra energy into creating and forging connections virtually compared to face to face. When it comes to those relationships at work, it is simply not possible for you to work in an environment long term where you do not feel like you belong, you feel othered, you do not feel included, right? I've had it happen to me.
Same.
It's the worst feeling in the world. It's so isolating. It can destroy your confidence. You start to really believe the things you're told or the way that you're made to feel. That energy, energy is a real thing. Again, you'll really resonate with that through your work. Having those kind of connections with people, and I'm not saying you need to be best friends, because there's another side to this where actually I think sometimes we give too much and we share too much. And I've been burnt before by doing that, because, you wear the heart on the sleeve and you're an authentic person. But building connections that are, professional and that are respectful is so crucial to your joy at work and your feeling of belonging. And if you feel like you belong, if you feel like you matter, if you feel like you're contributing and you're part of something, you're kind of part of a tribe, you're way more inclined to feel more connected to what you're doing. It is when you are isolated, it's when you're removed, that you kind of feel, what's the point and what's the purpose?
You could be fantastic at the job that you're doing. If you are made to feel isolated or made to feel less than, or you are separated from the group, your work will show that. The same goes for when you feel connected to your group and you feel welcomed and seen and heard and like you are contributing, it will reflect in your work. It's so vital for people to understand. You were talking about energy in your body and feeling the energy in your body. When you feel repelled, when you go into work, repulsion is a no. When you are skipping into work, like you can't get faster into that door, that's a yes. Hopefully this resonates with some people as we delve into a little bit of our personal stories. I used to feel, I had a job where I loved working so much with this company that when my farewell party came, I cried and my colleagues cried. And we were so connected that years later, I circled back and worked with the same team. And it was the same energy and we were thriving. Then I had a job where I was completely isolated and I cried every day. I made excuses not to go to work and it showed up in my work. So those things are very important for people to, notice in themselves. Boundaries. The right people will respect your boundaries. The healthy people will respect your boundaries. What advice do you have for navigating toxic dynamics with peers while maintaining professionalism?
I so hope people don't, but I can honestly tell you the majority of people who DM me on Instagram are looking for advice on how to deal with toxic colleagues, toxic bosses, toxic relationships. It happens, and I'm always going to be the person to say to you, always assume positive intent. We do not know what that other person is going through. It doesn't excuse the behavior. Just try as much as you can to remove how personal this feels, because more often than not, it is not about you, it is about them. So it is a projection that they are putting onto you. More often than not, we have a very visceral reaction to people who embody things that highlight our shadow self. So for instance, if I was to see somebody and if I felt very kind of like not confident at speaking up, or doing presentations, and there was someone at work who had a personality that didn't really gel with me, but oh my gosh, they're so good at standing up in front of everybody and talking, I'm likely to be like, well, that person is a real, because it highlights my shadow self. So being really aware, which is why also understanding your values and your behaviors is so important. My top advice when you are in a situation at work where it is toxic and there is a lot of drama, do not engage, do not gossip. Like Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. Don't entertain, don't lower yourself to their standards or their levels. If you are in a situation where you have people who are a little bit more direct with their toxicity, and so they use undermining statements, or they belittle you, or they make you feel small in meetings, whatever that looks like, start to really stand in your assertive, calm power and practice phrases back at them, because they're not going to be used to you standing up for yourself or other people. You won't be the only person they've ever been toxic to. They will have done this. It's a pattern. So if someone says something to you in a meeting, my favorite thing to do is just look at them, say, interesting you would say that out loud. You hold the silence. It will make them so uncomfortable they will want to die. There are so many beautiful, wonderful, assertive, respectful phrases. Again, Google them. Go on my Instagram. There's loads and loads of them that you can use. To just give yourself a bit more of a, you'll stand stronger, you'll stand taller. I think just be really mindful. You talked about boundaries. If you are in a situation where people are disrespecting your boundaries, they're not hearing you, they're not listening to you, they do not respect you. Do not go above and beyond. We're going to really shut down now. We're going to concentrate on our work, concentrate on getting the things done that we need to get done. And I would also urge you to evaluate the wider circle around dealing with this person. If you're in a big corporate or a company, I mean, I've been in startups where this has happened, where that toxic behavior has stemmed from the top. It cannot feel very easy to deal with because it's so entrenched. And then you really need to sit down and have a conversation with yourself and ask yourself if it's worth this, because no job is worth this.
This leads me to, if you don't leave a toxic environment, it could lead to burnout. And how can people say no at work and stop feeling guilty for taking time for themselves instead of always working without feeling like they're letting others down? Before I became a health coach and I was full-time in corporate, I felt so bad to put leave in. I wanted to work more hours. I felt like I was letting the team down, and I experienced burnout. I am grateful to say that I'm no longer in burnout. I've worked myself out of it, but it can be tedious to come out of burnout. So how can people say no at work?
The first thing you need to realize is that everything that you say yes to begrudgingly, or that is a difficult thing for you to say yes to, but you say it anyway, you're saying no to yourself. How other people respond to your boundaries, to you saying no, to you being really clear and specific and respectful and assertive, that belongs to them. It doesn't belong to you. As long as you are secure in why you're saying no, you don't have to justify and explain yourself as well, by the way. As long as you're secure in what you're saying and why you're saying it, you're good. Stick to your values. Be respectful. If I say no, I cannot do that. I do not have capacity. When I'm done with this, I'll see if I can figure out someone who can help you. Whatever that is, whatever you need to say no and however you need to say no, that is within your control. What is not within your control is how that person is going to respond. So remove the guilt from their reaction. It does not belong to you. The other thing I'm going to say, and I do this, is if I have to say, because I'm a self-declared recovering people pleaser, see lots of your listeners will be the same, practice my no's.
No is a full sentence. And it gets a little easier the more you practice. But if you look at really great athletes, they visualize how they'll play. They visualize how they'll, Tiger Woods visualizes how he's going to do that putt. Then you've got LeBron James. He's going to visualize how he's going to get that slam dunk. It's the same concept where you visualize having that conversation and you word out. You literally place yourself in that situation. And more often than not, you'll succeed.
100%. And I think people, I talk a lot, and I'm talking a lot lately around 2025 is my year of the soft life. And I think when people hear that, they probably think, oh, she's going to be all sloth-like and just not put herself forward for stuff. No, my ambition is still there. I'm still going to fight. I'm still going to go for it. But I'm going to do it in a way that is on my terms. And that includes my boundaries, and it includes me saying no, and it includes me following what feels good and what feels right. One thing that gets mixed up in boundary work is that people will say, oh, my boundaries, so good, my boundaries. I just say no. And it's not about that. It's about you co-creating and collaborating in a way that is mutually beneficial for you and the other party. And that might include you saying, you know what? I can't help you with that. But Dylan, excellent. Yeah. Have a chat with him. He'll be able to help you. It's all energy, and it's positive and it's constructive.
So what are the first signs someone might be heading toward burnout?
Yeah, this is a really big one, right? Because a lot of it is self-imposed, but it's also within the systems and structures that we operate in. We do have to acknowledge that. I qualified this year as one of the first burnout coaches in the world for a particular reason. We need more burnout coaches, awareness, understanding. Having gone through it twice, it's very real for people. And I think a lot of the times, the word burnout is thrown around a lot. True burnout is things like, it doesn't matter how much you sleep, you never recover. You develop a lot of cynicism around work and every day. Things that would normally bring you joy that you would like, you just kind of apathy or negativity towards it. You have a real lack of productivity. You just cannot seem to get things off the ground. You are irritable. Sometimes it can translate into poor self-care, so you stop exercising. There's a lack of satisfaction. You can really be susceptible to your imposter syndrome and really not be able to use your typical strategies to kind of pull yourself through. Often when you're in burnout, there's a real change to your sleep habits. So a lot of people either sleep too much or they get real insomnia. And you also will find yourself increased illness, susceptible to illness. Your immune system just shuts down.
Yeah.
But oftentimes in burnout, people do not realize that they are burnt out. They think all of these symptoms are, I've got depression, or I'm just a bit stressed, or, I'll just power through. I'll just get through to the end of February and then I've got my holiday. It doesn't matter how many holidays you take. If you're in burnout, you are in burnout. There are studies that show that burnout has the same effect on the brain as trauma, and trauma can take minimum 3 years to heal from. If anyone is listening to this podcast right now and they are either in burnout, recognizing these symptoms, or they feel they are heading for that, it is not doom and gloom. You will recover from this, but you must take it seriously. You must look after yourself. You must show yourself some love. You must get some support and help. That's boundary work. That might be therapy. That might be coaching. It might be talking to your doctor. It's rebalancing things. It's seeking support and help from your network and your friends. You don't have to do this alone.
What role does a boss or manager play in preventing or even contributing to burnout?
And as a senior leader myself, it is my duty of care to my team to make sure that I've created a psychologically safe environment for them, where they feel that they can come to me, they can show up as their full selves, and that they can, feel safe enough to talk about what is going on for them. And that I also recognize it without them saying anything. When, if there are any managers on the podcast listening now, if you have someone in your team who's typically super high performer, but they are demonstrating any of those previous symptoms, or they are apathetic, or they're a bit more irritable, or something's not quite right, check in with them. Don't just let it slide. Don't just refer them to HR either. That drives me mad. No, it starts with you first, right? It's your responsibility as the manager to kind of hold that space. As somebody who suffered burnout due to a manager who had no boundaries, did not know themselves, who had not done the value work, make sure you do your value work. Make sure you know who you are as a boss, as a leader, because it is your responsibility to not just get the job done, lead. Yeah. I think when it comes to organizations, what's really important is that they take burnout really seriously, and they think about their culture, and they think about high performance. You hear it banded about all the time, or high performance culture, or we're fast paced with this and that. Love that. Stunning, gorgeous, good for you. But what does that really mean? What are the values? What do you want to see from people? How do you want people to interact with each other, communicate, collaborate? How do you want people to show up if they're not 100% themselves? What environment do you facilitate for that? How is that looked upon, in the organization? All of that stuff really matters. And it's not something that just belongs. I'll talk about this all day long. It's not something that just belongs to HR. Belongs to everybody.
What's the best way to talk to your boss as employee if you're feeling overwhelmed and burnt out?
Hopefully you will feel like you have a psychologically safe space to work this through. If you do not, with your immediate boss, go somewhere else where you can. So somewhere else in the organization where you can, or another person that you can talk to. But the first thing is to be honest. Try and bring solutions if you can. You might not be in a solutions focused mindset, and that's okay. That's a huge part of the burnout. You might just need to turn up and say, I severely need some time away. I need to go and work on myself. I need support. Maybe it's saying, can we talk about flexibility in terms of shorter hours or less days, whatever that looks like. Be prepared with what you want to say. Practice what you want to say. Bring someone with you if you feel you don't have the strength to. Be diplomatic. Remember that showing up with intention. So show up as you. Show up as who you are. Ask them for guidance. Ask them for input. Ask them to be a part of this journey if they have the leadership language to be able to do that for you. But again, we go back to positive intent. They may not have encountered this before. They may not know what to do.
Our parents did not live in a time where they spoke about burnout, where they spoke about, having psychologists on site at certain organizations. So I'm really grateful that our generation are spearheading that conversation, but also that our children and their children it will become normal. So I love that you said bring someone with you if you're not strong enough to talk about where you're at. And I think that having support like that in the workplace it's uncommon, but it should be a common practice where your colleagues and, your line managers, maybe not your direct boss, but other colleagues have noticed this with you and can support you in that way, because that creates such a strong culture. Culture is not buying your team pizzas or taking them for drinks. That's not culture. Culture is learning what Joe Soap wants to do. Maybe he wants time with his family. He doesn't want to have the pizza slice. Maybe Sarah wants more money. She doesn't want to go for drinks, Learn what your people thrive on and what sparks joy. How do good or bad relationships with coworkers affect our mental health?
I mean, they affect it tremendously. There's a great book. This author talks about the fact that your work relationships are the thing that make or break your experience at work. And it's literally both sides of the coin. If you do not have healthy, safe, collaborative relationships with people at work, you will not have a good work experience, because we attach a lot of our self-worth to work. It's not you said it at the start of the podcast, we spend a lot of time there, we spend a lot of time doing this, and so if we feel as though we don't have those kind of relationships, that strength, that bond, and like I said before, it doesn't have to be best friend bond, it's just a bond, some kind of tribe mentality, you will feel left behind. And the other side of it, I'm sure we all have examples. You shared one earlier of teams we've worked in where, the work has been tough and the clients have been difficult, but my goodness me, it's the team that gets you through. I've got two beautiful examples of that, where in both of those roles, I've made friends for life.
It's human nature, because we are hardwired for human connection, and that it's part and parcel. So mental health and colleagues do play a role. That brings us into career transitions, my favorite, purpose and fulfill. How can you tell if it's time to leave your job for the sake of your health?
As soon as it's starting to affect your health, as soon as you feel like, and I have done this, I left a job because I ended up pushing through. And I spoke to a doctor and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I keep crying. And he was like, right, well, you're going back on antidepressants and you're going to quit your job. And I was like, doctors can't tell you that. And he was right. And I did. I had to have a conversation with that boss. I mean, this was years ago, and just say, I am not present mother, wife. I mean, my daughter was 2 at the time, and I just had lost myself completely. Coincidentally, that was one of the jobs where I made the best friends of my life who've stayed with me. When every day was hard, when I was sat at this computer until 10 o'clock at night and then getting up in the morning at 6 and delivering training to APAC, I was just like, what am I doing? I'm mid-30s and I feel like I'm crumbling. That was enough for me to just say, I can't do this anymore. And that was a well-paid, good job. When I tried to leave, they offered me more. They did the classic, better title. Didn't matter at that point. So I will always say to you, when your job is starting to affect your health, and when you feel as though you have nowhere to turn, or that it is falling on deaf ears, or you're following all of our steps and it is not landing and it is not working, then it is really seriously time for you to start thinking about moving away from that.
So then what steps should they take to ensure a smooth transition without adding more stress? Because let's face it, you've now come to the realization, okay, it's time. I've followed the steps. It's falling on the deaf ears. I've got nowhere to turn. That in itself is super stressful. So then how do you transition, or try to smoothly transition without adding extra stress to yourself?
Well, the first thing you need to do is think about yourself. What we're going to do is we're going to cut right back on how much we are giving without compromising who we are. I'm not going to go above and beyond anymore. I cannot do that. And that's part of your boundary work. It's making sure that you all the way through stay true to your values. So I think create some distance between you and the organization, to start to step back if you can, to protect yourself. Depending on the type of organization you are in, that will go one way or the other. They're either going to notice that and make things difficult for you, or they're going to notice that and think, oh, hold on a second, what's going on? How can I help? When it comes to you thinking about new jobs or ways forward, think about and this is the really hard thing to do, is just, I'm really going to encourage you to sit down and think about, how much money do I need to make each month? What does that look like?
That's such a key point, because I did exactly what you did there. My husband and I sat down, and also I think bringing your partner in, if you are lucky enough to have a partner who is supportive and wants the best for you, to discuss it with them, because 2 heads are better than 1. And I remember sitting with my husband and going through, I'm at burnout stage. can't function. I don't even know where to turn. And we sat down and we said, okay, what is the bottom line for us? What do we do in order to eat, to have petrol in the car, and a roof over our head? We don't need all the other bells and whistles with it. So hearing you say that is so key, because a lot of people don't want to talk about, no one wants to talk about finances because it's taboo. This is real life. And you've got to do what you got to do to save yourself. Money is not going to save you. So taking a knock on the salary is not a bad thing, because I read this quote very many years ago, beautiful quote, and it's about a bow and arrow. And when you pull the bow and arrow, you're pulling it back, right? And so that's your steps taking back. Yes, maybe you're going to lose a little bit of money. You're not going to be in a great job. You're not going to have the title. But once you let go of that arrow, once you've taken those steps back, you shoot far more further forward if you didn't take those few steps back. So
I love that.
I love that we talk about taking a couple of steps. Yes, you may take one step back or two, and it may look like a lower salary. Maybe you don't have the title you wanted, but that's going to set you up for the success of coming back to yourself. So we need to start talking more about the not so glamorous part of stuff. And I like it when human beings are human about it. Yeah, I took a salary knock. So what? I'm no longer the manager.
I completely agree. And I think we're scared of doing that, because what we see on socials, and you go on LinkedIn and it's all
comparison,
success story, and there's not enough real. It's not as perfect as everyone is making it out to be on there. I remember when I went freelance as a coach, everything I saw, I'm making 10 grand months, 20 grand months, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I was thinking, how in the hoo-ha are you doing this? And they're not doing it. It's all a facade. I think as soon as you stop comparing yourself to everybody else, you get real about you and your situation and what you need, the better.
Can someone find meaning in a job they don't necessarily love? And if you can, how?
You can. It goes back to your values. If it is a job that pays the bills and allows you to do other stuff, fine. Reframe. It is all like reframing is going to be your number one tool in 2025 and beyond. You're going to use that as much as possible, because when you reframe, you're starting to look at your situation with a more positive, action focused lens, as opposed to woe is me, I'm stuck here behind this computer in this office, blah, 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 blah. We don't want to do that. We want to think about, okay, what does this job give me? You will find meaning in anything if you do the work around it.
And I agree with that. I had a job. I was a customer relationship manager. Had no idea. When I got the title, I had no idea what it meant. And my boss was like, well, break it down. You work with customers. You work with the relationship we have with the customers, and you're going to manage that. I'm like, okay, I get it. Didn't really love it, but I was good at it. And it did pay the bills. And the reason I didn't love it was, and I'm not talking, I wasn't burnt out. What I mean by I didn't love it, it wasn't something I would have picked for myself. It would, like, what I love to do is, go and work out with someone at 5 PM and do some Pilates. I love that. That's something I love to do. But it's so true to say I was good at this job. My colleagues were very supportive. We did not have overwhelm. When someone didn't have capacity, another one took over. We really looked after each other. So yes, it wasn't something I loved, but I was good at it, and I had a great team to work with, and it paid the bills. So it is possible to have jobs where, yes, it's not like, oh my God, this great glamorous job, but it's good. How do you help clients identify whether their dissatisfaction stems from their career or other areas of their life?
This is so interesting because it is so deeply entwined. And I think a lot of how we feel about ourselves shows up in our work and vice versa. If we are in a situation at work where we're facing imposter syndrome, that probably won't just show up at work. That will be something, a deep-rooted fear, something that has happened to you, something we need to unpack, a behavior, a pattern. I think what's really important for anyone who is listening who wants to become a coach or thinking about being a coach is that coaching and therapy are two really different things. I'm not a therapist, not a trained therapist. When I'm working with someone, in particular with burnout as well, and I feel as though we're walking down the road of unpacking deep-rooted stuff, I'm going to refer them to the right space. I can support you in the here and now, and I can support you with unpacking behaviors and patterns. Absolutely. I'm not going to say we're not going to talk about your past. What I'm really focused on is, where are you right now and where do you want to get to? If a client is showing me that they have got deep-rooted behavioral stuff that has shown up time and time and time again, and they can trace that back to a particular point in life, I'm going to say to them that your toolkit here is going to be a bit of therapy and support in that way. You can have, I've got plenty of people actually who work with me as their coach, and they also have a therapist, you know.
Same.
And I think, and a nice way to reframe this is, you know, I saw a coach talk about this the other day. She said, I've got different people on my team. I have a coach for me, a business coach. I've got a therapist. I've got a personal trainer. They all work for me. They're in my team. So think about it that way. You know, think about, you know, what you can kind of bring into your little PLC, your company that is you. Back to the question, I think a lot of times things will show up for people in both work and personal life.
But that also then brings me to our fourth category, which is cultural norms and expectations. We only have 2 questions in this category, but the first is, how do societal or cultural pressures shape our relationships with work and success? And to couple with that, how can people achieve it?
Such an interesting question. I mean, that's for women. Gosh, we could do a whole podcast on that.
We should.
Because I'm supposed to, according to society, I'm supposed to be an amazing wife who takes care of my family and gets everything done, an incredible mother who's ever present and playing with her daughter and doing all this and that and reading with her every night and making sure she brushes her teeth. And no. At work, I'm supposed to be, you know, #boss babe. I'm supposed to be doing all this cool stuff. As a business owner, I'm supposed to be making X amount per month. Absolute rubbish.
Is that book that tells me it's the Bible that this is exactly
standards in which we are held as women compared to our male counterparts. Completely different.
Now, speaking of male counterparts, I don't know if you know this book. It's called Invisible
Woman. So good.
So if any of you are listening and you have that book, I want you to go and read this book. It's about the patriarchy. It's about women living in a society that is built for men to succeed in. And every guest has spoken on this point. So bringing it back, what can organizations do to create a healthier, more sustainable work culture to help employees feel less stressed and more supported?
Get rid of your pizza and your bloody wine afternoons. No one needs that. It's also not inclusive, you know? So many startups do this. They're like, oh, we're going out for drinks. Well, not everyone drinks.
Not everyone drinks.
Yeah.
And not many people eat pizza.
No, exactly. One of the main things I see in organizations is a real lack of feedback culture. Brene Brown has a great quote where she says, to be clear is kind, to be unclear is unkind. And I think people confuse feedback and healthy challenge with being combative, and it's not actually. It's really useful. I've only ever been able to learn from things when I've had the feedback or I've made a mistake. Yeah, that's where I've had my greatest growth. It's coaching, so important. Embed it everywhere. Get your managers coaching, get them understanding. I'm not saying they all have to qualify as coaches, but I am saying give them the tools that they need to have coaching conversations. Psychological safety is really, really important, and modeling those behaviors from leadership. So I want to see that male boss leaving at 4 p.m. to go pick his kids up from school. I want to see women at the top who are of color. I need to see the whole spectrum, because it's really important that you see yourself. Representation that matters. Something that's really important is vulnerability. She's become a very, very good friend of mine, but early on in my career, I had a chief operating officer. And, you know, I still look at her and think, my goodness, you're incredible. But I remember looking at her thinking, you know, I was brand new into the corporate world. I'd left teaching, and this was my first proper, you know, corporate job. Thinking, my gosh, she's so awesome. She's so strong. She's so like, just knows it. And she stood up one day, and it was for mental health awareness, like day or week or something. We put on an event, and she stood at the front and she talked about her family's journey with mental health, and she cried. And it just shattered the whole concept I had of what it should look like. And I've never had more respect, admiration, or adoration for somebody ever. And I know
Yep.
that made a really big impact on a lot of people. And so vulnerability is really important.
And it was during COVID, I discovered Brene Brown's TED Talk. And I just was so moved by her TED Talk that I just researched this woman. Got like, the only book I don't have is Atlas of the Heart. You've got that book.
I've got that one, yeah. It's good.
All the other books. And I couldn't, like a sponge, I couldn't lap up her information quick enough. It was just so moving, vital, relevant, resonating, all the words, all the things. It was just all the things for me. And it changed the way that I coach. It changed the way that I manage. It changed the way that I see vulnerability in others. If you have not heard of Brene Brown, go and look her up. She is a world leader in vulnerability. She coaches vulnerability, and people shrug. They're like, oh, they cringe. And they're like, oh, I don't want to be vulnerable. I was one of those people. But it is so important for us to know that vulnerability is the key to success. But what does a realistic work-life balance look like in today's fast-paced world?
It's extremely different for everybody. It's the first thing I'll say, but that's what I love about this question. It's varied. If I talk about my work-life balance and what that looks like, I run my own coaching consultancy, but I also work part-time at a huge academic institution at the moment, supporting their learning and development, and I love it. It's the best of both worlds. It's my gorgeous portfolio career. What I find difficult is a 9 to 5, because actually in my self-employed journey, I've realized that the time in which I do my most creative work is actually from like 5 p.m. till 10 p.m.
You're going to say that because I'm the same.
Yeah, I just come alive. I'm ready. I'm like ready to write my book at 8 p.m. and everyone else is like snuggling on the couch. So I've had to really, it's been fascinating as a journey to explore what that looks like for me. How do I make sure that things work for me, right? So I know that like between 2 and 3, 2 and 4, I'm like sleepy. In the mornings is not too bad because I have a daughter, so I'm up, I'm out, I'm getting her ready and all that stuff. But I do like to start my morning slow, so I'm not so hot on a 9 a.m. call. You're not going to get the best of me on that call.
Yeah.
So it's structuring my days to fit, and it's making sure that I build in adequate time for recovery, because I will not burn out again. So this month in particular, I have a super busy month. So what am I doing every weekend? Nothing.
It's very important to know yourself that way in order to get the work-life balance, especially if you're in a fast-paced industry. I fully understand when you say, I come alive at night. We have a similar career where I'm fully freelance now. Our days are ours to structure, and I've had to find, and it's funny, a lot of freelancers will understand this. I've restructured my days so many times. I have found as a non-negotiable is to have a slow morning. I remember waking up and not having any breakfast, just scooting, getting dressed, brushing my teeth, going to work, and then figuring out myself when I get to work. It's the complete opposite now. Yeah. So knowing yourself and your values, which we spoke about first and foremost, and it's been a trend through this entire conversation, is your foundation to finding your work-life balance, and I show up so much better for my clients because I've figured out what works in Lexi's schedule and what doesn't. And I coach this with my clients too. I explain to them, you need to get your time.
Yeah.
Fear of missing out is no longer, I don't have FOMO. I have joy in missing out.
I think whatever you can do in your work-life balance to show up intentionally and as yourself, that's what you need to focus on.
So how can people overcome the guilt that comes with prioritizing personal time over work?
In order for me to show up in the best way possible for my team, I have to be recovered and rested. That does mean sometimes saying to a client, no, I can't see you.
And reframing it to be, I want to give the best of me. And in order to give the best of me, I need to take this time. It does take practice, and that guilt does eventually dissipate. How can being more self-aware, which I think we've already answered, but how can being more self-aware help people improve their work relationships?
It's everything. The best leaders, the best colleagues, the best, performers at work are the ones who understand themselves and understand their communication style, their triggers, puts them in a bad place or puts them in a good place, what helps them to thrive and flourish. How to respond
Yes.
how to show up intentionally.
And once you notice that about yourself, it gives you the tool to notice it in others.
Well, the one thing I was going to say is like ego. So really understanding your ego. I have a big ego. Most people who I work with wouldn't think that because they don't see that when I'm with them. Because when I'm with you, right? I'm present. I'm in the moment with you. But I care deeply about how I am perceived and my brand. And I'm very protective of that. And so instead of thinking, ego is me walking around the place being, the best, it's actually me reframing it to be, how do I show up with intention? I don't think ego is a terrible thing. I think it can be. I think I've definitely worked for bosses before who've got a very big ego and they're not in check and they don't understand their ego. You need to be tuned into that.
So what exercises or tools do you recommend for clients to reflect on their career paths and their aspirations?
So number one is values. Understanding what matters to you is really, really important because that's kind of your direction, your compass, your guide.
Yeah.
I think the visualization point you made is really important. I have a vision board up there on my wall. I have it on my phone. I think one thing I love to do is to go on LinkedIn and have a look at people who are doing the kind of jobs I really like or that resonate with me. Like, what do they do? Be creative about that. Find a mentor in a job or a role that you quite like or that you kind of aspire to work in or do. But just be really intentional. But just be really aware. Start thinking about what it is that you want to do and what that looks like for you. That's really, really important. Because if you're not aware and if you're not sitting down and doing the work and thinking about it and reflecting, you'll never know.
And we want to talk about vision for change. So, Aimee, if you could change one thing about how we think about work, what would it be?
Everybody likes to think that their organization and what they do is different. But the one thing that we all have in common is people. So people-centered always, first and foremost. You said it earlier, we're hardwired for human connection. So just thinking about that is really, really, really crucial, really, really important. People are really all that matters. You talk, and I've referenced AI in this podcast, and we talk about it. It's a fantastic tool, but it does not replace human connection. So just keep that in mind in everything that you do, that human element, that people-focused part, super important.
You could imagine the way workplaces approach relationships and purpose. What would that look like?
I think one thing that organizations need to understand is that it is now an employee-led, an employee-driven world of work. There's high turnover. People don't stay in a job for life anymore. If people are not happy, they will move on. You can go on my LinkedIn and see I've hopped. Where I have not felt it was right, I've seen you later. It is so important, when organizations have their values stuck on their wall and they talk about all of that good stuff, that they're really living it and breathing it and that it matters and it connects with people. Bring that into your everyday, bring that into your behaviors, bring that into your mission, your purpose. Why are people there? What are they a part of? What are they doing? Why does their work matter? How are they seen and how are they valued? That is so important. The portfolio career is a fascinating concept. I'm doing a lot of research into what that looks like for people, but I'm seeing it everywhere. A lot of people, side hustles while they're working full time, thinking about the future, writing, doing just whatever that looks like. There is so much abundance in the creative world for you to get involved in new things while you're still doing the day job to meet the bills and do the stuff you need to do. Because when you engage with creativity, you genuinely engage with the universe. And that is where, when we talk about manifestation and we talk about all this gorgeous stuff that is absolutely there for you.
We have a tool in our health coaching and we use it when we coach our clients. It's called the Circle of Life. No, not Lion King like Circle of Life, but something similar. But one of the pizza slices, as I like to call it, from that circle is creativity. We literally talk about it as we would talk about your finances, the way you do physical activity, as we talk about the way you move through your career, the way you move through joy, your relationships. We talk about creativity as its own little, if you think of a little file that you pull out, creativity is one of them. And speaking of such deep stuff, I believe that we each have an impact on the lives we touch, often in ways we can't see directly. I'd love to know, what's the one unseen or invisible impact you hope to leave behind, not just from our conversation, but in your life's work?
Well, my mission statement is to help you step into the career you deserve, doing the work that you love. And there's two words I want to highlight in that statement, which is deserve and love. And the deserve part for me is, I hope to help people really see that they deserve joy and they deserve good things. Oftentimes the barriers are ourselves. Love part, that's your glow zone. It's just knowing that what you're doing is the right thing for you. It's bringing you joy. So if there's any lasting impact or any work, underlying tones, it's just that people feel the glow and they feel the innate, beautiful strength that they have within them.
Where can people find you?
I have a website, so it's AIMEE, so aimeeyoungcoaching.com. You can hit me up on Instagram and TikTok. Same thing, Aimee_Young_coaching. I'm on there all the time. I'm free coaching stuff. And if you are a woman, I would love to invite you to join the Glow Zone free Facebook community. All the details of that are on my website and on my Instagram. In there, I offer free career coaching, literally zero strings attached. The whole mission behind this piece of work is to create a safe space for women to connect, collaborate, see each other as collaborators instead of competition, and support each other.
I'm going to link all of that in our podcast on the Instagram side. And I'm really grateful to have sat with you today. Had such fun. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that we can do this more often.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you to all our listeners, and remember to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Instagram to get alerts of our next episodes. Leave a review and a comment, rate us, and send us messages on what you would like to hear on the podcast. And here is to your health.